Hello and welcome to Code Tutorials. Today we'll take a look at the Animated Device Slider, one of the widgets from the key add-ons for Elementor Premium plugin. This widget can create incredibly dynamic page elements, which look their best when used across the entire page. Here we can see an example of the Animated Device Slider widget in the form of an image. This is a view of one of the demo home pages from the key theme. And below that, we have a breakdown of the key parts of this element. So we can see that the Animated Device Slider, as its name suggests, comes with an option of adding a device frame that would nestle your central image. It allows you to set images and backgrounds for the slides. You can choose to number the slides and add text with more information if you want to. Finally, you can include a way for visitors to get in touch by adding a contact form within the last slide. The Animated Device Slider is a widget that can single-handedly take care of your site's homepage. Now that's a broad overview. Before we dive into specifics, let's scroll back up a bit and click on this link to open that demo homepage and see this element in action. Here we are. The slider takes up the entire homepage. This is the design I'll be recreating shortly for this tutorial. Now we can see that there is a central framed image and that the slides are split in half horizontally so you can make each visually distinct, whether you use a combination of an image and a colored background or two of the same. The slides are numbered and there's also some text content on the left. Finally, there are 4 pagination bullets on the side indicating the number of slides that are included in the slider. You can click on a bullet to switch slides, or you can scroll. The result is the same. I'll scroll down to the last slide, and here we can see that this space is dedicated to a contact form that allows visitors to reach out. While it may seem like there are a lot of details to this element, it's not complicated to use or set up at all. Let me show you. We'll need a page to work in. I prepared a new one for this. Here it is. And now I just need to add the right widget to my page. I'll search for it in the sidebar. Animated Device Slider. Okay, drag it over to the page. And this is what the widget looks like by default. Before I start customizing it, I want to make my slider full width. So for that, I'll right-click and open the navigator. Then I can select the section to access the section editing options. Under Layout, I'll change the content width to full width. Mind you, you must be using a page template that allows full width content. That's something you need to adjust in the WordPress page settings. Now, carrying on with the options here, I'll switch to the Advanced tab and set 0 for the margins, and 0 for the padding too. That way, I will have eliminated any additional space between my section and the page edges. Now, let's do the same for the column. Once you access the column editing options, you need to open the Advanced tab and set the margin to 0, and another 0 for the padding. Alright, there we go. Now my Animated Device Slider covers the entire width and length of the page. I'll click on the widget to access its options. And with that done, I'll close the navigator as I won't be needing it anymore. Now, when we want to start customizing the slider, the first thing to catch the eye is the device frame in the center. The option responsible for putting it there is this one, Enable Phone Frame. If we switch it to No, this will remove the device frame, as well as the image that will go with it from the slider. So we'd get something like this. Okay, I'll restore the phone frame as it's part of my planned design. There we go. Right under that, we have a field where we can choose a replacement image for the frame. So you can show a different device or a different type of phone as the frame. I have a replacement in my media library. This is it. Insert media. Make sure the image you use is in PNG format because you'll need the transparent section to show the visual you add to the frame. Okay, this is what my frame looks like. I'll be adjusting its size later on. For now, I'm just replacing the dummy content. As part of that, we have the background type option. I'll click on the first of the 2 buttons here, Classic. The background type allows us to pick what the top half of the slider will look like. Or the top in the first slide, it's going to keep switching places with the other half as we go through the slides. And the background type that I opened, Classic, is for setting a single background color or a background image. I plan to add an image using this field, but before that, let's briefly examine the other background type, Gradient. Using the options here, you can set a 2-color gradient background. You have 2 separate color options for that. 2 location options, so you can pick how much coverage each of the colors will have and whether the gradient type will be linear or radial. Different combinations of these options will produce different results, and you can experiment to see what you like best. However, I plan to use a background image, so I don't need the options for the gradient background type. I'll reopen the Classic and go to the Image field so I can add the image I want for my background. This is it. Insert Media. Okay, there it is. The text that's here is almost invisible now, but I'll be fixing that in due course, don't worry. For now, I'll carry on adjusting my background image. One of the things we can set is the image position. Keep in mind, how visible the change proves to be will depend on the dimensions of the image you're using. So if I, for example, set top left, nothing changes. But if I pick center instead, then the image moves, given that it has enough height for a shift to be apparent. You can go through the settings in this drop-down to find the one that works best for you, but I'll go back to the default setting. Okay, there. Then we have the attachment option, which lets us pick how the image will behave when we scroll. We can set the image to scroll with the rest of the page or remain fixed no matter how we move. The default setting is actually scroll, so if I scroll through the slider, this is what it looks like. And if I switch to the actual scroll setting, we can see the behavior is the same as I move through the slider. The alternative to this is the fixed setting, and it means the image won't move at all while we scroll through the slider. Please note though that the fixed setting only works on desktop screens. Okay, I'll set this back to default. After that, we have the repeat option. It's a really useful one if you have a background image with smaller dimensions. Then you can make it repeat so it covers the available space. Since my image is 1920 by 1080 pixels, its dimensions are large enough to cover the background. I don't need it to repeat. If I wanted to specify, I could pick the no repeat setting, but there's no need. However, if your image isn't covering the background entirely, then you can set it to repeat, which will make it repeat both horizontally and vertically. Or put more simply, it will repeat both downwards and sideways. Alternatively, we have the repeat X if we want the image to repeat only horizontally, and repeat Y if we want the image to repeat only vertically. Since my image is large enough to cover the full screen, I'll leave this set to default. After that, we have the size option. The default setting is auto, which means the image is shown in its original size. And if I switch to it, you can see that everything stays the same. But we have other settings too. There's cover, which makes the image cover the entire background space, even if it means stretching it or cutting away a bit of it to make it fit. Then there's contain, which prioritizes showing the entire image, even if it means resizing it to fit. And finally, there's the custom setting, which allows us to specify the size we want by setting a specific width. Okay, I'll be using cover for my design. That will let the image cover the entire view screen. Alright, following this, we have the enable tagline line. It's set to yes by default, so we have this line here. I'll switch mine to no as I don't plan to use it in this instance. And this brings us to the image items. These items represent the slides in your slider. Barring the last one, we have a separate set of options for that one. So let's open the first item. Here we can change the title. I'll replace the dummy one, just a sec, and a new title is there. We just can't see it because its color blends into the image. I'll change that when we get to the style options. For now, my priority is replacing the dummy content with my own. Okay. The next field is for adding a link. Here we can set a URL that will link the title and whatever target page we want. Since this is just a tutorial, I'll set a hash symbol that will make it seem like I've added a proper link. Then we have the text field. I'll replace this description with content of my own. After that, we have an option for adding a decoration to the title. Basically, you can add a small image or an icon that will be placed in front of the title. I'll add something just to show you. For example, this icon. Insert media. And there it is. It's positioned right before the title. You can faintly make out the text. Okay, let me remove it. There. The next thing we have is the tagline field. That's for replacing this small text here. I won't be using this, so I'll just delete the placeholder text. And then we have the image field. It's for uploading a visual that will be placed in the device frame. I already have the image I want in my media library. It's this one. Insert. And there it is. Yes, the frame is currently too big for it, but we'll be adjusting that when we get to the style options. The important thing now is that I've replaced all the content I wanted for my first slide. That means I'm ready to move on to the other slides. I'll add one more. Just click on this button to create a new slide. I'm going to have 3 slides here, plus the last one with the contact form. I'll customize the other 2 slides now, but since we've seen how that goes, I'll skip ahead with the video while I work. Okay, I've entered new content for all 3 slides. Now we can take a look at how to set up the last slide. As you can see, we have completely different options for it. That's because, let me scroll down to it, the last slide is intended to have different content from the rest of the element. It's designed to show a contact form made in the Contact Form 7 plugin. And you have this option here allowing you to choose which one you want to display from all the contact forms you have on your site. The drop-down shows all the forms that I have. As you can see, it's a good idea to name your forms in a way that will make them easily recognizable when you have to pick them out. The animated device slider contact form is the one I created to display on the last slide of my animated device slider. It's what we see here on the right, and that's the form I plan to stick with. I have a separate tab open with that form in the back end. Here it is. This is what it looks like within the Contact Form 7's editor. You can create any kind of contact form you like here. It can be more elaborate or much simpler than mine. It's up to you. I'll leave you a link to the Contact Form 7's documentation in the description below, in case you need clarification on how to make a contact form. Okay, let's get back to the animated device slider widget. We covered this option, now let's start from the top. We have the Contact Form 7 title. I'll add something just to show you what it might look like. Okay, I made the slider reload. I'll add a subtitle as well. It will be more efficient to show them both at once. Okay. Now let me scroll down to the last slide. Here we are. The subtitle is this smaller text and the title is right below it. I don't plan to keep these. Instead, I'll add some contact form text. But before that, let me clear the title and the subtitle. Alright. I'll add the text now. Just a moment while I type it all in. Okay, the slider reloaded, so let me scroll down to check on the last slide. And here's the new text. If I had kept the subtitle and title, it will be placed right under them. We have one more option in this section. It's the background type. Just like we've seen earlier in the general settings, the background type can be classic, meaning we can set a block color or an image, or it can be gradient if we want to set a blend of 2 colors. Let me show you what that might look like. You need to set the first color, this will do, and then pick out the second color. For example, this. Once you've set the colors, you have 2 location options, one for each color, which you can adjust to determine how much space each of the colors will take up. And all that is with the linear gradient type. Provided you keep it, you can also adjust the gradient angle. The unit of measure here is in degrees, so keep that in mind. Now, besides the linear, we also have the radial gradient type. If we switch to that one, then the colors will seemingly emanate from a point on the page. You will still be able to adjust their location or coverage to get the look you want, but you will also be able to change the position of the color's origin point. By default, it's in the center, and we have all these settings you can pick instead. Let me show you one. For example, top right. So this is broadly what you can do with the gradient background type. However, I plan to use the classic, so I'll switch back to that. Again, you can set an image or any single color you like here. That color can be as contrasting or as similar to the slider's background as you like. For my design, I'm going to make the form's background transparent. And you can use any color for that. It doesn't matter as it won't be visible. You just need to drag the slider for setting the amount of transparency all the way to the end. And there you have it, a contact form that blends into the page. With that done, we can move on to the next section, App Buttons. Here we can enable buttons that will take users to the app or Google Play Store. I'll enable them so we can see what they look like. So if I switch the App Store link to yes, then we'll get this button at the bottom of the slider with a link to the App Store. And the button is customizable. You can change its color to anything you like using this familiar color picker, or replace the image used for the button. The default image contains both the Apple icon and the text we see on the button. To change it, simply upload a replacement here. Then we can set a link, for example, to a specific app in the store. Under that, we have the option to enable a button for the Google Play Store. If I switch it to yes, then a new button will appear next to the first one, and we get pretty much the same options we saw for the Apple Store button. Alright, I'll disable this, and the App Store button too. I don't plan to use them. Okay, that's the App Buttons section done. Let's look at the next one, Content Position. Actually, in order for me to show you the options here, we need to be able to see the content in question first. That's the text that's placed here. For this, I need to open the Style tab. And while we're here, I'll cover several sections of the options, as that will make it much easier to track changes when we get back to the Content tab and the options we left there. So, let's get started. The first section is for changing the stripe style, basically the bottom half of the slide we see here, and it only has one option, background type. Again, we can choose between the classic background type, where we can set an image or a color. If I set a new color, we can see how the entire slider half or stripe changes. And if you prefer, you can set a two-color background by picking the gradient background type. The options here are identical to the ones we saw for the contact form background in the last slide. Of all the options here, the one I plan to use is the image. Okay, there. Insert media. And here it is. Once you've added an image, you can change a few things about it. We've seen these options earlier when I added the slider background image, so there's no need to go over them again. And with the image I'm using, and for my design, I can comfortably leave all these set to their default values. Alright, that's it for stripe style. Let's check out frame style. This is for adjusting the device frame and the image inside it. The first thing we can do is change the frame size. The current unit measure is in pixels, so if I move the slider all the way to the end, we get this tiny frame. It's adorably small, so I'll set a bigger value here by typing it in. Okay, there. Then we have the frame image width option. As its name suggests, it's for adjusting the width of the image within the device frame. I'll set 339 pixels for this. There we go. While I'm doing that, I'll also adjust the image height. I'll set 557 pixels to make it fit the frame I chose. Okay, next we have the frame image border radius option. The radius is what curves the corners of the image to make it fit the frame shape. If I set too large a value, like 50 pixels, we'll get more blunted corners, which leaves a gap at the top but fits with the bottom of the frame, which is a good way to illustrate that the radius needs to be adjusted while keeping in mind the frame shape. For my design, I'll set 25 pixels, as it fits the frame I have perfectly. That brings us to the next section, title style. The first option here is for changing the HTML tag for the title text. But before I do that, let me change its color so we can see it. I want to use plain white, and I can do that with a hex code, or by moving this circle to the top left corner. There. And now, if we look at the title tag option, we can choose any of the settings in this dropdown. I'll use H1 for my title. Remember, this is going to be my homepage. Alright. After that, we have the title typography settings. This is a bundle of options that let us change things such as the font family for the title. I'll change mine. Just let me find the font I want. Okay, there. Next, we can change the font size. I'll set 75 pixels for mine. Following that, the weight option can make the title text lighter or bolder. I'll set 300 light for mine. Then there's the transform option. It can turn the text to uppercase, lowercase, capitalize it, or leave it normal, which is the way we typed it in. Normal is the default setting, and I deliberately used lowercase while entering my content, so this can all stay. Following that, we have the style option, which can change the title from normal, which is the default, to italic or oblique. After that, the decoration option will let us add a line under, over, or through the title text if we want to. Finally, we have 3 options for adjusting various spacing aspects of the typography. Those are the line height, letter spacing, and word spacing options. And that's everything we get under typography. I'll close this now. After title style, we have the text style section. The options are pretty much the same. I'll start by changing the text color so we can see it. It's going to be white again. Okay. For the text, we also have the option to change its HTML tag. The selection in this drop-down is the same, but I'll leave mine set to default, which is the P tag. Last but not least, we have a bundle of typography options for the text. I won't go over them again in detail since we covered them already. Instead, let me just change what I need for my design. That's going to be the font family. I'll use the same one I have for the title. There. Then I'll change the font size to 22 pixels and the weight to 300 light. Okay, that's all. I'll close the typography options. After this, we have the tagline style section. That was the text next to the number in the bottom half of the slide. I erased mine, so these options won't do me any good. But if you kept yours, the options are familiar. You can change the tagline's HTML tag, color, or some aspect of its typography here. Okay, let's move on. The next section is decoration style. Another thing I don't have for my design. The decoration is the small image or icon you can add next to the title. But if you added one, you can modify the space on top or to the left of it to adjust its position. Alright. Under this, we have the number style section. It's for the number in the bottom half of the slide. To start with, we can change its tag. I'll switch mine to H2. And there. The size isn't that different, but the style is. Next, we can change the color of the number. I'll set white for mine so it matches the text content. And after that, we have the typography options. I'll use them again to change the font family to keep everything matching. There. Then font size, I'll increase that to 180 pixels. And finally, I'll set the weight to 300 light. Okay, that's all I wanted here. With that, we covered the style options for the content, the image, the text, the number, all of it. I am going to go back now to the Content tab as we still have some options we haven't covered there, and I needed my content to be visible in order to show them effectively. And those options are here in the Content Position section. At the top of this section, we have 2 switches, odd and even. This refers to the slides in the slider. When the odd switch is on, the changes we make will affect the odd number slides. And when the even switch is on, we'll be changing the even number slides. Okay, let's see what options we have here. The first is Basic Info Horizontal Alignment. It refers to this text here, and the alignment can be to the left or the right. Now, this option works in concert with the option below it, the Basic Info Horizontal Position. Let me show you what I mean. If I switch the alignment to the right, it doesn't look like the text moved at all. But if I set 50 pixels in the position option, the text shifts right away. That's because I set it to be aligned to the right, and then I specified how far from the page edge it was going to be. Those are the 50 pixels I set under position. And now I have 50 pixels worth of space here, to the right of the text. And if I return the alignment now to the left, while keeping the same value for the position, I'm going to get the text on the left side, with 50 pixels worth of space between it and the page edge. So, when working with the alignment option, remember to also adjust the position. To that end, I'll leave my alignment on the left, but increase the value for the position to 90 pixels. Okay, then we have the Basic Info Vertical Alignment option. It's the same principle. You'll need to keep in mind the option under it, as they kind of go together. So if I change the vertical alignment to the bottom, the text is still in the same place. But when I add something for the Basic Info Vertical Offset, I'll put 90 pixels here. There. the text moves to be 90 pixels away from the bottom edge of the page. Now, if I were to move the alignment back to the top, then the text will be 90 pixels away from the top edge of the page. For my design, the text will be aligned to the bottom. Okay, there. Next, we have the additional info horizontal alignment option. You've probably guessed where this is going. It's another alignment option that's connected to the option under it. This one, however, affects the number, and the tagline text provided you kept it. I'll set the alignment to the right for this. And for the additional info horizontal offset, I'll switch to percentages and put 12 as the value. And now my number is on the right, and it has this space that amounts to 12% of the page width, separating it from the edge. Then we have the additional info vertical alignment, and this is for the number as well. I'll set bottom for mine. And then I'll enter its vertical offset, which is going to be 193 pixels. Now I have this space, and my slide number is exactly where I wanted it. And this leaves us with the options for the even number slides. I want to have the same positions for my content across all slides, so I'll simply set the same values in the options under even. Give me a moment while I enter everything I need. It's literally all going to be the same. But the beauty of having two sets of options is that you can easily create differences between the slides if you want to. Alright, let me see how my slider looks now. Perfect. The text content is consistently occupying the bottom halves of the slides, barring of course the last slide, which is purposefully designed to be different. So that was the content position section. And with that, we pretty much covered all the content options. The two sections we have left in this tab are something you'll find in every key add-on widget. The first is the developer tools. It contains just one option. If you switch it to yes, then it will display the widget in the form of a WordPress shortcode, the light gray text you see on the page. Then you can copy this text for use elsewhere on your site. Alright, I'll switch this back to no. And under that, we have the help section. It contains links to various helpful resources in case you need them. And that's all for the content tab. Let's go back to the style tab now and see what options we haven't covered there. So we've gone over everything up to and including the number style, which means the next section in line is bullet style. These options will help us style the slider's pagination bullets, which are located here. We can see them better during slide transitions. The first option we have here is the bullet color. When I change it, the most visible difference is on the first bullet, the active one. By active, I mean the bullet that marks the slide which is being displayed. I'll set plain white for this. There. Now, this actually changed the color of all my bullets, but that's kind of hard to see. Why? Well, because of the default transparency settings. The active bullet is opaque, but the inactive ones are set to be partly transparent. So the color change is not as visible on them. I'm explaining this because our next option, active bullet color, may make you think it's the same as the bullet color option above it. In reality, when I make changes to the color here, it will show only on the active bullet. The inactive ones will remain unchanged. I want my active bullet to be a bright green color, so I'll set the hex code for that. Okay, there it is. And if I scroll to move the slides, we can see the active bullet color move to keep pace with the change in slides. And now we come to the opacity option. As I said, there is a degree of transparency set by default, but we can remove it. The greater the value we set here, the greater the opacity. I'm going to make my bullets 100% opaque. This also allowed the inactive bullets to become more visible and show the white color I set for them. Alright. Following that, we have the bullet spacing option. It determines how much space we'll have between individual bullets. You can see the gaps are much bigger now. I'll round this out to 20 pixels. Okay. Then there's the bullet offset from edge option. With it, we can set how much space will be between the bullets and the edge of the page. I'll set 50 pixels for this. And this is what my pagination bullets look like now. With that taken care of, the next section is spacing item style. It has just one option, the text margin top. We can use it to adjust the space between the descriptive text and the title. You can see how the gap increases when I start to move the slider. I'll set 27 pixels for this. And this brings us to the last section of the style options, the last slide style. Okay, let me scroll down to it. There are several things here we can style. However, I decided to omit some of those things from my design. For example, the title. I didn't use that or the subtitle. I only added some text while adding content to my last slide. So options like the title color won't do me much good. And the same goes for the title typography, subtitle color, and subtitle typography. However, I do have some text, so we can see the text color option in action. We have this familiar color picker, and you can easily choose whatever shade you like. I'll stick with plain white as that's what I've been using so far. After that, we have the text typography options. I'll just make the changes I need here and we'll carry on. I want to replace the font family to have the same one throughout. There. And increase the font size to 30 pixels. Also, I'll switch the font weight to 300 light. And last but not least, set the line height in pixels to 45. Okay, the slider reloaded. I'll close the typography options and let's see what my last slide looks like now. Okay, the text is more in line with my design, so it looks nicer overall. Let's see what other options we have in this section. There's info width. By adjusting it, we can set how much the text will be able to stretch width-wise. For this, I'll set 76 pixels, and now each sentence falls into its own line. Following that, we have the space between subtitle and title option. As I haven't added the title or subtitle, this option won't do me much good. And it's pretty much the same for the space between title and text. Although I do have the text, without the title I don't need to create any space to separate them. Which brings us to the last option here, the margin above contact form button. For this I'll set 80 pixels. There. Now a quick note about the button. It's part of the contact form, which is why it doesn't have options for styling it within the animated device slider widget settings. Rather, this button is styled using global theme options. I'm using the key themes, so specifically if I open the tab with my form editor and then go to my themes options, Code Essential Add-ons, then options, give me a sec. Then in the elements section we'll find options for styling different, elements of our site, such as labels, input fields, and relevant to us now, buttons. And if you examine the options here, you'll see that we can change all kinds of things related to the button, like its color, hover color, background color, and much more. And it's these options here that I'd use if I wanted to change the style of the contact form button. However, please note, given that these are global theme options, any changes here will affect all your site's buttons unless you've made exceptions on specific pages or within specific page elements. With that said, let's go back to the animated device slider settings. The last slide is done, so I can hit update to save my work. We've covered all the relevant options as we've gone through making this slider. While we're here, I'd like to briefly mention the Advanced Options tab. It has several useful options for responsiveness, positioning, entrance animations, and more, but since it's available for all Elementor widgets and not unique to the animated device slider widgets, we won't be covering it in this tutorial. So we're pretty much done. If I scroll up to review the slides, you can see all the content I added and the changes I made. The design you see here is a copy of one you can find as a key theme demo homepage. If you'd like to take a closer look at it, or simply see how this design looks on a live page, you can return to the page dedicated to the Advanced Device slider. Here you'll find some introductory information on the widget, as well as a preview and link to the design you saw me making here. Hopefully, all this information, as well as what we shared in this video, will help you master the Advanced Device slider widget so you can start creating stunning homepage designs by yourself. Still, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions you'd like to leave us after watching this tutorial, please drop us a line in the comment section below. Also, make sure to subscribe and be the first to learn about any new tutorials on our channel. Thank you for watching.